So here we are on a Ben Shapiro Show Facebook Live special. Joining us on the line, Jared Monroe. You may know Jared Monroe not by his last name, but by his, nickname, NotGayJared. He's the producer over at Steven Crowder Show. He's producer and writer at Louder with Crowder. He's also the host of the Morning Grinders on CRTV. Recently, as you may have seen, Jared went undercover with the leftist militant group Antifa to learn more about what they were planning over at University of Utah, where I was speaking. Jared, thanks so much for joining me.
I appreciate it. You know, I got to say, I appreciate this cyber distance between me and the most dangerous man in the world.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very threatening. Also, Jared is my newest follow on Twitter. He'd been begging me for months not to follow him on Twitter.
And you're my newest unfollow, so you know.
Well, then it all works out. So the reason that I follow Jared is because Jared was brave enough to actually go undercover with Antifa, University of Utah. And the reason we're talking with him is because people need to know that he's his own human being, that he's not just a polyp that grows on the side of Steven Crowder, because the way that the media treats this is basically Crowder producer or Crowder goes undercover with Antifa, and it was actually Jared who's uncovered with Antifa. So that's not a rip on Crowder, who helped organize the whole thing and worked with Jared, but the one who's actually standing there receiving knives from Antifa and risking the possibility of getting shot and or infected is Jared. So, Jared, first of all, before we start, I think that we have a lot of people who have no clue why Crowder calls you not gay. I think they have an inkling, but where did that nickname come from in the first place?
You know, I wish I could dive into the specifics of that. I believe if you go back to episode like 39, there's some clarification that can happen. But just, you know, on principle and legality and just, you know, it's a character thing. I've you know.
Okay, magician never reveals his weird secrets.
Exactly.
So so we'll leave that alone. But okay, so Jared went undercover with Antifa. Jared, number one, I don't want you to give away too many details. Obviously, tell us what you can. So how did you get in with Antifa in the first place?
You know, it starts with we have a brilliant researcher. So he's been spending months and months infiltrating them from the back end. So this all starts, they really, you know, like any terrorist organization in 2017, they used social media, they used online platforms to really kind of grow their network of people. And just so happens they're so desperate for people to show up to these things, they're eager to welcome new people into the fold. So, you know, we infiltrated from the back end over the course of months, you know, creating fake profiles, creating fake names and usernames to infiltrate them with the messages and kind of find out where they're going to be, how to meet up with them, how to be involved. So that's really where the root of the work takes place. And then so I show up looking like a douchebag just to be there the few days of the event. So that's really where the magic happens. It's all on the back end of things.
Okay, so the first time they saw you was in the day before the event, a couple days before the event.
Yes.
Is that okay? So you threw on a wig, you threw on some contact. When I saw you, gotta be real, I was a little freaked out. I mean, that's normal when people see you, but then when you're actually dressed up as an Antifa member, it's just exactly that much more. So what was it like talking to these folks? Were they nice to you? Could you tell that they were weirdos right off the bat? Do they seem like sort of mainstream leftists gone wrong, or do they seem like crazies who have glommed onto leftism?
You know, on first impression with them was kind of just normal lefty crazy people. So they, you know, I met up with this person, excuse me, in a Starbucks cafe to get the app installed on my phone. In fact, when I first met up with him, I asked, "Hey, this is what I'm wearing. I'm wearing a gray shirt, gray hat. What are you wearing?" He said, it said gray shirt, gray hat. So we had a lot in common right off the bat. We looked almost identical to each other sitting across the table. And so I'm sitting there. I'm like, this seems like a normal crazy, normal crazy leftist person. I mean, they were very friendly with me. They were very welcoming. The guy gave me his last shiv. So I assume he had my best interest at heart, and he told me to keep his ice pick. So I really thought these were just normal, everyday leftist crazy people until he started talking about the violent measures they had taken to ensure their success of the night. So that's kind of the tip-off for me, is when they really start talking about game plan, where they were keeping stashes of guns, how many guns and what kind they had showing up to this event. So that's really where the tip-off for me, that these are not just normal crazy people. These are an extra dose of liberal crazy with nothing to lose.
So did they see themselves as using violence in retaliation to violence, or do you think that these were people who were looking to initiate violence, like they were actually going to go and start stabbing people or punching people without provocation?
I think the people with nothing to lose are looking for any excuse to be violent. So they showed up, they proactively gave me knives, they proactively gave me ice picks. When we started talking about, because I asked them, hey, what other groups do we have showing up to this event? And they are really good at coordinating these things with other organizations and activists. So they listed off, they said, Lex Scott, Black Lives Matter, they're going to be here doing this. And these other socialist organizations are going to come here and do this. And they actually mentioned one of them. I can't remember the name of the organization, but they said these activists are going to come up, but they're pacifist. They're not going to fight, is what they told me. We have this on camera. This will all be coming out in raw footage soon, if it's not up already. But yeah, so they distinguish themselves as people who are willing and ready to fight and be violent.
So one of the things that's happened in the aftermath of this is you got out of there after they offered you weapons. You said you had to go to the bathroom, a brilliant tactical move, and went directly to the police. And the police arrested these folks.
Also, I really had to poop.
Well, okay, so then it was just a twofer. So you went to the police, and the police apparently arrested these people, but then released them. And then I guess one of the people got arrested again later that night for getting in a fight. Is that correct?
That's what I'm told. I know what I know for sure is Honeybee, her code name Jenna. She was in fact arrested later that night for aggravated assault. So she was the one who actually gave me the knife earlier that night. She wanted her knife back later that night. I told her, police have it. They're looking for you. Run. But she was in fact and this is something that Fox 13, I believe, of Utah. They're trying to discredit the entire story, saying there was no real threat that night. But then later in the piece, they talk about people in our videos, people involved in our hidden cam sting, giving out knives, were arrested later that night for aggravated assault, and that's all in footage as well. So it's like, pick your story. Which one are you going to go with? Was there no lethal threat at all, or were people arrested? Because your story contradicts itself.
So the police apparently also released a statement saying that they don't think that there was a credible threat of violence from these people, despite the tape that you had turned over. And it looks like one of the spokespeople for the police was a politically motivated actor. What do we know about that?
We're looking into that more. We will be releasing segments on that. Here's the thing about the police too that you got to remember. Not only activism aside, they want to make sure that they put on a good face, that they did a good job. And you were there. I mean, there were hundreds of them. There were SWAT people on the rooftops. You saw this for yourself. And it's something to remember about police as well, because we've been dealing with actually detectives who have been working on this case. And by the way, detectives who, once they saw my footage, they recognized half the people in it. They've been on to them for a while. So you got to remember, detectives and cops like this, it's almost like going to the doctor. You try to go to the doctor, get one thing resolved, and they just send you to another specialist who refers you to another specialist. It's 3 doctors down the line before you get anything resolved. So that's kind of how the police department works. There are a lot of departments who one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. So while one hand might say, earnestly say that there was no threat, as far as they know, there's detectives working on other cases who are saying, yeah, these people are bad people and we're trying to weed them out, and this footage is being used to help do that as we speak right now.
So how widespread is the network? Because it's going to be the left trying to pretend that this is a couple of isolated actors, that it's not a big deal, that you just sort of stumbled into the most violent or the worst of these people. But how big is the network, and what do we know about how deep it goes?
It's really hard to say, because it's really hard to estimate the size of Antifa because of the way first of all, the way they've gone underground to recruit people it's almost impossible to track. But we do know we have people from Antifa California saying that we didn't infiltrate the real Antifa. So, of course, that only makes their case worse, because if these weren't the real violent ones, the ones with AK-47s and cabana knives in their car, then which ones are the ones with the tear tattoo who have full auto machine guns in their cars? Which ones are the real ones? So it's really hard to estimate though how deep it is and how really connected they are across the network of the country. We do know they work really intentionally within their cities to recruit and to grow their organization, their activists, as fast and as broadly as possible. That's why they were so eager to have me be a part of them. They were chipper to have me show up and be a part of their big project.
So NotGayJared was the one who infiltrated Antifa, and Steven Crowder is the guy for whom he produces. Jared, thanks for doing the hard work here and letting Steven take all the credit. That's always awesome.
That's our biggest fear in life, is going down the flames of glory just for the headline to read, Steven Crowder and some other guy died on the front lines.
Well, what you did was actually pretty brave, going undercover with some of the worst people in America, and thank you for that. And I personally thank you for that, since it was at the event that was being held at my speech. So, thanks for protecting me. You guys you guys had my back, so I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to earn that follow.
Thanks a lot, Jared Monroe. Thanks for joining the Ben Shapiro Show. Catch you in a bit.